Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got a good show for you guys here today. We're going to talk about the Green New Deal. That's really, really exciting. We're going to talk about the unveiling of that and what it's kind of about. But first, we also are going to talk about Donald Trump owning himself on Twitter. The return, sort of Jeb Bush, kind of, but not really. I guess I'll kind of explain that because it's a bit of a weird tease, but it's related to Howard Schultz. So I think you'll really, really enjoy that. We also have the truth about Donald Trump's wall admitted on Fox News. That's great. And how the banks, using Trump's tax cuts, screwed us over. So that's another fun story. So we'll talk about all those today during the show. But first, if you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. If you haven't already, that helps the show out. If you're on Facebook, of course, share that out and follow our page. We would really like to get to 10,000 followers on our Facebook page. So, please do that if you haven't already. Okay, now, yes, exactly. Please clap. I love this, right?
Please clap.
Almost as pathetic as...
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
Yeah, that's going to have some fun times. I'm going to enjoy doing that story. The Jeb Bush, Howard Schultz. Oh, you're going to love it. I really don't want to give too much away, but I think you guys are going to enjoy that story. But first, I guess before we go into the show, updates and stuff. We're still doing memberships on YouTube, so you want to join, it's $5. Also, patreon.com/TYTNation. You can basically go and pledge anything, and that helps to fund the show. And we're running the camera drive. So we're over $900 on the camera drive. So we're working on it. We're getting there. We're trying to raise $1,500. And if you guys have any suggestions on what kind of camera that we should buy for the show, I'd like to be able to use it as like a webcam as well. So to use it for like the daily show, for like high def resolution and looks, make it look better than it looks now. And also to be able to use it out there to film events and stuff with high quality. So we can do high quality recordings, edit them, and throw them up on YouTube. So if any of you guys in the audience are camera buffs and know something like that, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter or something, Jeff's Politics, or at ATN on TYT. That's our Twitter account, official for the show. So before I get into it, though, so I just want to say that I spent most of the day actually like trying to dig ourselves out. Right now in Michigan, there is like freezing rain. So I woke up to my entire driveway being completely 100% iced over. And I mean dangerous icy. So I literally broke a shovel when I was trying to clear the driveway today. It's kind of a crappy plastic shovel. One of the ones that you get for like $15-20. So I'm not surprised that it broke. I was like, oh, great. Now I got to go to the store. I used up an entire bag of road salt. And so it was not very fun. I had a great time. Then I had to try to get out of my driveway. And the problem is that I got in like an incline. So if I try to go down and I hit a patch of ice, I'm going to slide out into the road. And the road in front of our house is a four-way, like there are 4 lanes, and it's constantly busy. Like it's literally a main road. So if you slide out, you're going to get hit by a car. So it sucks. So we've got just some really strange weather, freezing rain. We had the polar vortex this last week, so we're just getting slammed here. But we're here. I've got the driveway pretty much all cleared out, and so I just wanted to share that because there's some pretty insane weather, and I just hope that everybody here is safe. You know, please be careful out on the roads if you're in these areas that are affected by this weather. It is really, really dangerous, and so just be careful, guys. Okay. Anyway, let's get into the first story. Let's have a little fun with President Trump whining on Twitter. Great. Okay. Now, President Trump believes he is being harassed by Democrats. Now, there's a lot of Democrats that have now taken over the House that are looking into doing some investigations. For example, they're looking into his tax returns that he still has not released. And so, facing that onslaught of new investigations by the Democrats, Trump is making himself into a victim. In fact, he tweeted this out. He says, "So now Congressman Adam Schiff announces, after having found zero Russian collusion," which is not actually true. They're still doing an investigation, by the way. And maybe they're talking about the House investigation. But there's still a Mueller investigation as well. And I don't know if they're going to find collusion, let's be honest. But actually, I'm not even as interested in collusion as I am about possible financial crimes, which you could probably find if you look into Trump's taxes. But I'm going to continue with the tweet anyway. Congressman Adam Schiff is going to be looking at every aspect of my life, both financial and personal, even though there is no reason to be doing so. Never happened before. Unlimited presidential harassment. Oh, sorry. No, never happened before. We never had an investigation into a sitting president. Oh, wait. What about all the different investigations into President Obama? Constantly. How about the investigations in Hillary Clinton about Benghazi? How about the investigations into Bill Clinton for getting a blowjob by an intern? I mean, are you serious? Never happened before. Presidential harassment. He continues. The Dems and their committees are going nuts. The Republicans never did this to President Obama. Again, that's a complete lie. There would be no time left to run government. Oh, maybe you could take some time out of executive time. You spend about 7 hours a day in executive time doing literally nothing. No, there's no more time in the day because of all the investigations. I hear other committee heads will do the same thing, even stealing people who work at White House, a continuation of witch hunt. To which he says, finally, presidential harassment. It should never be allowed to happen again. This is a guy, again, who kept harassing President Obama over the birth certificate. Oh, I'm going to find his birth certificate. I don't think Obama was born in this country. And I've got great people, tremendous people in Hawaii looking for the birth certificate. I'm going to find it. No, you're not. Because he already showed his long-form birth certificate. Look, he's insane. That's the only word for it. He's absolutely crazy. But anyway, Twitter had a little fun with this, and this is the best part. Let me read some great tweets here. Ryan Parker simply says the birther. Bud Levin says, President Snowflake has spoken. And then it adds, beautiful garbage says, the tax man cometh. Oh, a little reference to them looking into Donald Trump's taxes, which I think if you're going to look for collusion, right? Well, you actually want to start with Donald Trump's finances. Well, why is that? Well, look, any look into his finances, and you know, it would possibly, and this is my opinion of it, would probably show some pretty shady transactions. You start following the transactions, you start following the money, and then you're going to follow it to where it ends up showing some pretty shady stuff. Again, that's my read of it. Donald Trump is somebody who is corrupt. He has asked people to do illegal things on his behalf, would you be at all surprised that a look into his personal finances, which by the way, he says, you can't look at my tax return. I'm being audited. Longest audit ever. Don't buy it. Not buying it at all. He is hiding his tax returns, and I wonder why. It could be that there is some shady stuff in there, and he does not want them to find it. Now, there's more responses. I love these. Shannon Watts says, Amen. The president should definitely not be harassing people. I love that. Andrew Todd says, it's called being a publicly accountable figure. This is what you signed up for when you Forrest Gumped your way through the oath of office. To be fair, Forrest Gump was actually a likable character. I actually like that guy. Not so much with President Trump. Now, Nicole Sandler. Nicole Sandler, of course, is a friend of the show. So she runs a stream as well. And she said, presidential harassment is what you do every day to anyone who disagrees with you. To which that is absolutely 100% correct. Brian Klaus says, nothing to see here, just a wannabe despot who attacks the press, scapegoats minority groups, violates ethics rules, hires cronies and family members to top posts, tries to undermine rule of law, and loves foreign dictators, saying congressional oversight should be outlawed. Now, look, we're having fun here, but he brings up some really important points. This is somebody who does not want oversight at all. He wants to continue doing anything he wants, and that, of course, what he wants is to make money. So he wants to make money from the presidency, put his own people into office or into these cabinet positions that will deregulate his business so that when he gets done being president, he makes a ton of money. This is his entire presidency, you have to understand, is basically a money-making scheme. So, and that's all you need to know after you've looked at and studied Donald Trump. This is how he operates. Now, Rick Wilson says, myth, the strongest, boldest, most testosterone-drenched alpha male silverback gorilla He-Man to ever serve as president. Reality, whiny bitch. I love it. There's more. Brendan Nyhan says, the president says that oversight by a co-equal branch of government is harassment that should never be allowed to happen again. What would you say if you saw it in another country? That is an excellent point as well. There's more. Ananja Haradis says, yes, you should stop doing that. Gladstone says, hey, Trump's finally come up with a nickname for himself. Love it. Morton Overby says, presidential harassment, also known as Article 1 of the Constitution. Now, that's important because, hey, that's freedom of the press here. Free speech. Propaganda says, yeah, but when you're a star, they let you do it. They let you do anything. Christopher Supern says, methinks thou doth protest it too much. Hashtag presidential guilt. I love that. So, look, we've got a lot of great tweets here. Bullies, for example, Jacob Harris says, bullies like to claim that they're the real victims, which is true. Mick Moran says, yes, a middle-aged white man harassment should also cease forthwith. Christina Reynolds says a man who led a birther movement against the sitting president with no basis, who wanted to jail his opponent, Hillary Clinton, and I suspect would have many tweets supporting President Clinton investigations if Twitter had been around there. Great. Larry Murphy says, executive time. And finally, David Weiselman. I love this. Excuse my French, but you are such a whiny little bitch. Look, I love these because the internet basically does not allow you to get away with your BS. And look, the president thinks that, oh, no, Twitter's the best way to get out my messages. Yeah, to like an army of bots. I think most, like 2/3 of the people who follow Donald Trump, and I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but man, a lot of his followers are not real people. So who's he actually talking to? No, this is what most of the internet actually believes and actually thinks about President Trump's tweets. And I just love it. Okay. Let's move on. So let's go to Howard Schultz. Let me get my sidebar here. Ex-Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz is running a dumpster fire of a campaign. He's literally sitting at 4% in the polls among all different groups, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. He is not very popular. They really don't like him. And he's running as a centrist independent. Well, earlier today at a speech at Purdue University, Howard Schultz inadvertently made a throwback to 2016, and the internet is, of course, having a lot of fun with this. But first, I want to show you the video here and why it's hilarious. Let's take a look.
If I choose to run, I promise I will absolutely release my tax returns. You can clap for that. Under President Daniels, the cost of an education here will be less expensive in nominal dollars in 2020 than it was in 2012. Congratulations. Got to clap for that.
So, in case you're wondering why that's awesome, it's a little bit of a throwback to when this happened.
I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. I won't trash talk. I won't be a divider-in-chief or an agitator-in-chief. I won't be out there blowharding, talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
So there you have it. Howard Schultz just jabbed himself. Oh, that's great. Look, so again, this was fun because Howard Schultz is deeply unpopular. Nobody likes his ideas. So he's got to literally ask people to clap for him. I wonder if President Trump will call him low energy. I don't know. Maybe he would. Now, of course, Twitter had some fun with this. Now, they said, one user said, Howard Schultz is the new Jeb. John Infante says, the speed at which campaigns go through their life cycle now is amazing. Schultz is already at full Jeb. Now, Aston Weasley says, imploring an audience to clap is not inherently bad, and lots of great speakers do it all the time. You just have to have a certain sauce. And Howard Schultz, Jeb Bush, weren't particularly sauceful. BuzzFeed Ben says, unlike Jeb, I don't think Howard Schultz can feel shame. Realize how pathetic this is. That's probably true. You know what's irritating about this is that here you have Howard Schultz, billionaire. He's getting a CNN town hall. Why? Why is he getting... He's got 4%. Why is he getting the CNN town hall? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. He's a billionaire. That's what this is about. I mean, come on, man. That's the only reason. Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris, of course, it wasn't doing very well in the polls before her town hall. Now she's in like 3rd place. So what CNN is doing is that they're basically giving the establishment pick. Now, what's weird is that Schultz is not the establishment pick, but it's because he's super, super rich. And so, look, that's what it's about. It's obvious that nobody likes Howard Schultz Nobody's interested in a centrist independent. And it's basically just going to be a waste of time. But there's more. Juan PA says, Jeb Bush has left the chat. Johnny Verhoevic says, we're living in the Jeb time continuum. Josh Billington pointed out that nobody clapped for an applause line about the cost of education at Purdue, so Howard Schultz prompted the audience to clap. And then Max Tani says, didn't realize that for some people, the conclusion they came away with from 2016 was to run Jeb's campaign again, which famously got absolutely crushed by Donald Trump. Again, nobody is interested in Howard Schultz. None. So let's let's be honest about that. Somebody running on this kind of platform that's running on cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and trying to eliminate the deficit is not going to win in a presidential election, especially a primary in 2020. That's why he's not running as a Democrat, because he would get absolutely destroyed in the Democratic primaries. And that's why he would likely be a spoiler in this election. So hopefully he eventually gets the message and drops out. If not, well, it might be his fault if we get 4 years of Trump. Okay. So let's take a break here. We'll come back. We've got the Green New Deal. We're going to talk about that. And so send your super chats. We'll talk about those, and we'll be right back. Around the Nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. So, trolling. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an idiot and you can be on the channel. So, if you're an idiot and you say things that are not true, then you gotta go. Sad day. So, nobody's gonna listen, so continue to troll away. You just help out with the viewership. So, okay. Anyway, let's go on to something that's actually important. And that is, well, the Green New Deal. Hold on. All right. So earlier today, AOC, along with Senator Ed Markey, released their plan to fight climate change. It is the Green New Deal. Now, of course, this is a very ambitious program or set of policy proposals that is going to basically revolutionize energy production and the environment and the economy for over the next 10 years. Now, this is a 6-page document that outlines plans to cut global emissions 40 to 60% below 2010 levels by the year 2030. Now, they also want to neutralize human-caused greenhouse emissions entirely by the year 2050. Now, the resolution stakes out a 10-year national mobilization plan to build something called smart grid, as well as rapidly increase the share of American power generated from solar and wind power. So that's, again, alternative energy, right? So now, one of the goals and one of the ways to do that is, of course, to invest heavily in solar and wind energy, and to try to scale back, of course, fossil fuels. Now, part of that is ending fossil fuel subsidies, and of course, transferring that money over to things like alternative energies. So now, also, they're looking into upgrading existing buildings to achieving maximum efficiency with energy and water use. So now, that's actually incredibly smart, making sure that we reduce the amount of energy that we use so that the energy that we gather through wind and solar and alternative energies is actually more efficiently used. Well, that makes all the sense in the world. Why aren't we doing that already? Now, another focus is expanding on public transit and high-speed rail. Now, that, of course, is basically meant to go after some of the one of the biggest sources of carbon emissions, and that's transportation. So transportation, of course, is like I said, if we start working on things like electric cars and actually increase range and battery life, well, that's also going to help a lot, as well as getting that energy, because right now the grid also works on coal and natural gas and oil. So even if you're charging up your car, if you're still using power plants that use coal, oil, and natural gas, that doesn't help the the environment as much as it should. So that's an issue. So now, to meet some of these goals, which also include building more sustainable food system and ensures universal access to healthy food and guaranteeing universal access to clean water, they describe, the document describes working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers to reduce agricultural pollution with sustainable farming and land use practices that increase soil health and supporting family farming. So look, again, there's a lot of common sense, yet ambitious goals in this proposal. Now, there's also a section that outlines guidelines for future Green New Deal, included everything from ramped up antitrust enforcement, ensuring a commercial environment where every business person is free from unfair competition and domination by monopolies. So again, there is a large antitrust enforcement in here, which is great. They also address the social safety net, providing all people of the United States high-quality health care, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, economic security, and access to clean water, air, and healthy and affordable food and nature. So this is more than just fighting climate change. This is also about doing a lot of other, I guess you could call it social engineering, by making sure that people have things like, again, free housing and healthcare. So this is very, very large. So this is incredibly comprehensive. And yet, so far, not a lot of detail other than, of course, what's basically spelled out on those 6 pages. Now, it sounds, again, bold, right? And it is bold, but it's also really common sense. I mean, you have somebody like Ed Markey. Now, Ed Markey has written climate change legislation. I think it was carbon tax. And he's actually also a member of the Democratic establishment. Now, here you have the old guard teaming up with AOC. So that tells me that some establishment Democrats at least do understand the need for major change, and that this change is, of course, doable, right? So now, the resolution, just to point out some caveats here, the resolution does avoid controversial technologies. Now, this is, of course, the carbon capture stuff, and instead opts for low-tech solutions. Now, what are these low-tech solutions? Turns out, planting new forests, so combating deforestation, and basically using natural ways to try to decarbonize the atmosphere. And so, look, you reduce emissions, eventually eliminate emissions, and then you don't have to come up with new technologies to get that carbon out of the air. What you're going to do instead is let the natural processes take over. Oh, look, that's smart. Now, another caveat here is that the document avoids explicitly calling for the end of fossil fuel development. Well, now that's interesting, right? Now, it allows for keeping nuclear power plants in place until after the initial 10-year mobilization plan is complete. Now, I'm actually okay with that. Now, notice how it doesn't call for new power plants, new nuclear power plants. It just says that some of these power plants that are nuclear can continue to run after that 10 years in case that, you know, the fact that we may not have solar and wind and alternative energy systems in place 100% to take 100% of the burden by the, you know, the next 10 years. So in that way, it's actually somewhat pragmatic. So now some of you might be upset about that because here we have Fukushima. But Fukushima aside, nuclear technology is at least better than coal, oil, and natural gas. And yes, it does have some significant issues, at least with radioactive waste, but then there also is other upcoming technologies that make that waste inert. So we could look into that possibility as well. In fact, there's a lot of countries that are also looking into that. So we can kind of disagree with that, but again, the Green New Deal does not call for any new nuclear power plants. So again, this is not some far-fetched, crazy leftist plan. This is a doable plan. Now, of course, there are, obstacles, right? So, for one, you've got Republicans. Now, Republicans are a major obstacle because they work for the fossil fuel industry. They get a lot of money from oil and gas, more so than a lot of Democrats. Now, Democrats still get money from oil and gas, of course. Look at Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke broke his no fossil fuel pledge during his campaign. So he took money from fossil fuel CEOs. That's not a good look, man. But anyway, that's not the only thing that's going to be in the way. Of course, there's also politics. There's also Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. Now, Pelosi recently dismissed the Green New Deal as, quote, the green dream, or whatever they call it. Nobody knows what it is. Well, maybe you could read the thing. That might help. Do your job, go over the proposal, and actually figure out what it's going to do. Are you going to do that, Nancy? Of course not. But look, 80% of Americans like the idea of a Green New Deal. Actually, it's about 81%, right? Now, I think with more specifics that are going to come out, people are going to understand that it actually is a good practical plan. And it's pragmatic, and that, look, once people see the details, as the details get hammered out, as this gets discussed and brought through, of course, Congress, well, look, you're going to see more support. Now, for me personally, I'd like to see a full phase out of fossil fuels within 10 years. And look, to be fair, this legislation plans to do that without having to ban it. So, look, that makes sense, right? Now, look, again, this is a great plan, right? This is a good proposal. This is a good start. I do support it. We'll see more of the details that are coming out, but already you're seeing a lot of Democrats that are running in 2020 come out to full support it. Now, some of them are a little bit more vague in their support, although they say that they support the idea of it, right? And that's, of course, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, and Kamala Harris. Now, the rest of the 2020 field has already immediately signed on to this, as well as a lot of Democrats in Congress. So there's a lot of energy behind this, and there are a lot of people who are really, really excited about seeing this. So we'll see where this develops from here, but already a great start. Okay. Okay. Let's move on here. Let's go to Steve Doocy. So Steve Doocy, host of Fox and Friends, accidentally let slip the truth about why Donald Trump is trying to use a state of emergency to build a wall on the southern border. Now, I'm going to show you that video here where he accidentally admits the truth, and then we'll break it down.
The Democrats are saying there is no money for a wall, and that's just to, rub the president's face in it. They may have money for fencing, and it becomes a semantics thing. But ultimately, I think, given what we have heard the administration say in the past, and Democrats as well, Democrats have said we need to hear from experts. Yesterday, they heard from experts, people from the Border Patrol and people from ICE. The committee did. And what did they say? They said we need a wall. They said we need $5.7 billion, so they were supporting what the president has been saying. I bet if he gets anything north of what he was going to get in the first round, so something in the 2s or 3s, he will take it. And a fence or a barrier close enough to a wall, given everything else, because he needs to start running for re-election, and he would be able to say, look, I closed down the government, and I got a better deal for America.
$3 billion.
All right, so that's a bit of an admission. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. I mean, look, it's true. This is nothing more than a stunt to please racists like Ann Coulter. And that's what it is. Most of the American people don't actually want the wall, especially people who are down in the areas that will end up losing their land from the wall. I mean, look, people don't like eminent domain. What do you think that the government needs? They need land to build on. They're going to take that land from Americans. So whether it be Democrats or Republicans, Americans are pretty much against eminent domain. And they're not happy about this. So now, what's interesting here is that there was a recent story about Border Patrol and how they recently deleted a page off their website that actually attacked the idea of having border walls. Now, that's interesting. Now, they said, walls and fences are temporary solutions that focus on the symptom, illegal immigration, rather than the problem. Now, what is the problem? According to the Border Patrol back in 2012, employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens. Now, look, I would agree that would be a problem. Yes, there would be less immigration if less corporations and companies hired undocumented immigrants. Now, Donald Trump did hire some of those. So, That's interesting, right? Just a little interesting tidbit there. But more on this page here. Now, they also disagreed with wasting taxpayer money on building fences and walls along the border as a means of curtailing illegal entries into the United States. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Hillary Clinton ran on a fence, and I thought that was a ridiculous idea. Both Democrats and Republicans, they don't want to attack the real issue behind illegal immigration. Now, they said, interestingly enough, in that same webpage, they said until we attack the root causes of illegal immigration, that fencing and walls is essential. So, okay. So now how do we actually, what is the real issue that is driving this immigration? Which, by the way, over the last few years has dropped precipitously. In fact, most people actually stay in the country. They don't cross the border in order to get here. They overstay their visas. And that's normally work visas, right? So now, how do we, what are the issues, right? And how do we stop them? Well, for one, I think we should end the drug war. You legalize, regulate drugs, and take the power out of the hands of the cartels. Now, that would be one way to do it, right? And I'm actually trying to assist some of these countries, like Honduras and El Salvador, by trying to target poverty, right? And I think also maybe we should stop instigating coups in Latin American countries. Now, none of those things we have done under President Trump, nor have we done them under President Obama or anyone else. We have just simply not addressed the real issues behind this. And the wall or a fence, it's basically a Band-Aid. And right now, since there is immigration from Mexico that is so low, right? I mean, sure, you have these small waves of refugees, and that's different from illegal immigration. It is refugees, right? This is basically a Band-Aid solution in search of a problem. So instead of owning up to our interference in Latin America or the drug war, we're putting up a racist wall at a massive expense to the taxpayers. Remember, the $5.7 billion that Trump shut down the government for is not actually going to build a wall. It's not going to build the entire wall. It's going to build a very small section. So understand that. The funding that he's been trying so hard to secure is not going to cover it. It's anywhere from $20 to $60 billion for a border wall. So, okay. And then what happens when the Democrats give him that? Well, then he's going to ask for more. Then he's going to ask for more. Then he's going to ask for more. It's going to be a continued cycle of trying to take the government hostage. That's why you can't give in. As far as border security goes, again, I think the best way to do this would be, yes, you hire more border agents and you hire immigration judges. I think that's the biggest thing. The humanitarian crisis down there is people having to wait years and years, sometimes decades, to get into the country legally, right? Especially when they're a refugee from a country that is plagued with violence, a lot of it from our drug war. So, but again, with Republicans, with Donald Trump specifically, this is about basically a gimmick to try to get people who are super afraid of immigration on their side. And here's Steve Doocy admitting it. Okay. One more here. So the Trump tax cuts promised to spur more investment and higher wages and more jobs. Well, of course, here's another story pointing out how that's not true. Now, this time it involves some of the largest banking institutions. Now, some of these institutions, according to Bloomberg, who reported on Wednesday that after reviewing financial results and commentary from the 23 banks the Federal Reserve designates as the most vital to the economy, it turns out that these banks took a lot of money in tax savings, but did not do what they had promised to do. Now, on average, the banks had seen their effective tax rates fall below 19% from the roughly 28% they paid in 2016. Yet the money mainly went to payouts to shareholders, while the firm cut thousands of jobs and saw their lending growth slow. So understand, they got all this money in tax cuts, or saved all this money, gave it to the top, their shareholders, cut jobs, and stopped lending. Well, the whole point of banks is to lend out money. Well, if they're not doing that, then what are they there for? Well, they're there for profit, because you have for-profit banks. Now, I wonder if this could be solved by maybe allowing the post office to operate as a bank. That might actually be a really good idea. But more information here. Now, the 23 firms had boosted dividends and stock buybacks by 23% and eliminated almost 4,300 jobs and have signaled plans to cut even more. Now, four of these nation's six biggest banks, Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley, paid less taxes than they projected in 2018. And while employees did get some bonuses and raises, they were marginal compared with the bank's windfalls. So understand, they gave out a couple of bonuses here and there, raised some wages, and that's good, but it's not nearly enough. They spent a majority of that money padding their own pockets. Now, meanwhile, the report detailed the biggest winners were the shareholders. Tax savings contributed to a banner year for banks, with the six largest surpassing $120 billion in combined profits for the first time. In fact, the dividends and stock buybacks for the 23 lenders surged by an additional $28 billion from 2017, even more than their tax savings. So we've seen this before. The Trump tax cuts have led to over $1 trillion total in stock buybacks. Whereas we have most people, their incomes are basically stagnant. Their incomes are stagnant. There's not a lot of an increase of benefits, and there's no actual hiring boom. Yes, unemployment is, it's very low. At the same time, this is basically a continuation of the economic conditions as before, as it's been shown that even though taxes have been decreased massively on corporations, they have not spent that money on creating jobs. And what they have done is that they have funneled that mostly to themselves, stock buybacks, which of course, unfortunately, inflate the stock market, and again, executive compensation. So this is a complete failure in what these tax cuts were supposed to do. And so there's been outrage now, thanks to this report. I want to give you a response here from the group Patriotic Millionaires, who said, quote, "This is the GOP tax cut in action, screwing over working families and handing out tax breaks to large banks and corporations." They're absolutely right about that. Because look, and we've warned people about this. We've warned people that, hey, the tax cuts, they're not for you and me. They are for the wealthiest Americans. I am in favor of middle-class tax cuts, actual middle-class tax cuts. Now, they said, corporations said, Republicans, they said that the corporations, don't worry, we're going to close the loopholes. So they'll pay, they're not going to pay any less. What we're going to do is we're going to lower the rate, we're going to close the loopholes, and we'll actually get more money out of the deal. But right now, they didn't close any loopholes. The ones that they did close are for the middle class. That's why there are so many people out there now that are saying, our taxes went up. We are middle class families, and now we are paying more into the system. That's the truth of the Trump tax cuts. Now, one more quote here from Democratic Representative Katie Porter. Now, she said, simply, quote, "outrageous." Well, understand that. And then finally, nonprofit Better Markets says it's time for an economy that prioritizes Main Street Americans, not Wall Street's biggest banks. And that is the direction that we absolutely need to go in. We need to stop giving so much money in tax cuts to these giant banks, to already rich corporations. What we need to do is we need to actually institute a fairer tax system on the wealthy. 70% over, or any dollar over $10 million. That is a fair tax system. That is a fair tax rate. And also, I would be really interested in seeing Elizabeth Warren's proposal to do a small 2% wealth tax on people making over $1 billion. So that would be incredibly effective at targeting and going after inequality, and also, getting enough money to be able to do some of these programs like Medicare for All, etc. So, anyway, that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.